My name is Vanessa Holt. I am 61 years old, and for the past 6 months, silence has been my closest companion. After my son Michael's death, the house by Clearwater Lake became more like a museum than a home, every corner holding a memory, every photograph a wound I could not heal. That October afternoon started like any other. The air was thick, the kind of late-season warmth that clings to your skin, even when the leaves have already turned. I had just poured myself a cup of tea when I noticed movement on the dirt road that runs along the lake. A silver sedan kicked up a cloud of dust, moving far too fast for that narrow path. I squinted, my heart skipping when I recognized the driver. It was Lydia, my daughter-in-law, Michael's widow. We hadn't spoken in weeks. After the funeral, she disappeared, ignoring every call, every letter. I told myself she needed time to grieve. But something about the way that car swerved, the panic in her movements, told me grief wasn't the reason she was here. She pulled to a stop right at the edge of the lake, slamming the brakes so hard I could hear the tires screech from my porch. My tea slipped from my hand, shattering on the wooden floor, but I didn't even look down. I was frozen, watching her. Lydia jumped out of the car like she was being chased. Her hair was messy, her face red as if she'd been crying or screaming or both. She opened the trunk, yanked out a brown leather suitcase, the same one I had given her and Michael as a wedding gift. I remember joking, "So you can take a little piece of home wherever you go." Now, seeing it in her hands, I felt something heavy in my chest. The suitcase looked far heavier than clothes or keepsakes could explain. She looked around nervously, as if making sure no one was watching. Then, without hesitation, she dragged the suitcase to the water's edge. I called out her name, but the wind swallowed my voice. She swung the suitcase once, twice, and on the third swing, she threw it into the lake. It hit the water with a sound that made the birds take flight. Lydia stood there for a moment, staring as it floated, then slowly began to sink. And then she turned, ran back to her car, and drove off, leaving only the echo of her tires and a cloud of dust behind. For a few seconds I couldn't move. My mind tried to catch up to what my eyes had just seen. Then I heard a faint, muffled sound from the lake. It was small, fragile, but unmistakable. A cry. My body reacted before my brain did. I ran. Down the porch, across the field, sandals slipping in the dirt. The water was colder than I expected when I stepped in, but I didn't stop. I grabbed the handle of the suitcase and pulled with all my strength. It was heavy, sinking fast, but I managed to drag it to the shore. The sound came again, weaker this time. My hands were shaking as I unzipped the wet leather. The zipper stuck, rusted from the water. I forced it open with trembling fingers and my whole world stopped. Inside, wrapped in a soaked blue blanket, was a newborn baby. His lips were purple, his skin pale as wax. For one terrible second, I thought he was gone. Then, as I pressed my ear close to his tiny chest, I felt it, a faint breath, so light I almost missed it. He was alive. I fell to my knees, clutching that fragile little body against me, whispering to the empty air, "Hold on, sweetheart. Please, just hold on." The sound of sirens cut through the quiet hills 15 minutes later, though to me it felt like hours. I stayed there on the muddy shore, cradling that baby against my chest, whispering nonsense just to keep him awake. His tiny fingers clutched my shirt, barely strong enough to hold on. When the paramedics arrived, I could hardly speak. All I managed to say was, "He's alive. Please help him." They worked fast. One wrapped the child in a thermal blanket while another checked his pulse and airway. "Hypothermic," one of them said, "but he's breathing." Hearing that word, breathing, was the first time I exhaled since the suitcase hit the water. They took him to the nearest hospital in Milford, and I followed in my car, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Every few minutes I had to wipe away tears just to see the road. My mind kept replaying the image of Lydia throwing that suitcase, her face pale and cold as stone. I told myself there had to be an explanation. There had to be. At the hospital, the staff rushed him into intensive care. I wasn't family, not in the legal sense, so I had to beg just to stay in the waiting area. An older nurse, Miss Ellison, took pity on me. She brought me a blanket, a cup of coffee, and said softly, "You did the right thing, dear. Whatever happens, you saved a life today." I sat there until night fell, staring at the white tiles and sterile walls, praying for a heartbeat I couldn't hear. When the doctor finally came out, I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. "He's stable," the doctor said, adjusting his glasses. "It's a miracle he survived. He must have been in the water for less than 10 minutes. Relief flooded me so hard that my knees almost gave out. But it didn't last long. A police officer entered, notebook in hand, his tone gentle but firm. "Ma'am, we need to ask a few questions." They wanted details: the time, the color of the car, the license plate, everything. I told them everything I saw, every sound I heard. When I said it was Lydia, my daughter-in-law, who threw the suitcase, the officer's expression changed slightly. He asked if I was certain. "I would recognize her anywhere," I said. "Her face, her hair, it was Lydia." He nodded, then showed me something on his phone. A photo. Lydia was at a gas station 10 miles away, time-stamped exactly when I saw her at the lake. My throat closed up. "That's impossible," I whispered. The officer closed his notebook. "We'll look into it, ma'am. Try to get some rest." Rest. How could I rest knowing what I had seen, what I had pulled from that lake? That night I sat by the hospital window and watched the reflection of the city lights on the glass. Somewhere down the hall, machines beeped softly, keeping that little life alive. I didn't know it yet, but the truth waiting ahead would be darker than I could imagine and far closer to home. 2 days later, I was called back to the hospital. Detective Ramirez, the man in charge of the case, was waiting for me near the nurse's station. His expression was serious but not unkind. "Mrs. Holt, we ran the DNA test you authorized," he said, glancing down at the folder in his hands. "We compared it to your son's medical records." My breath caught. "And?" "The child is your grandson," he said quietly. "The biological son of Michael Holt and Lydia Barnes." For a few seconds I couldn't process the words. My grandson. The baby I found sinking in that lake was my own flesh and blood. My knees gave out and I had to grab the counter to steady myself. The detective waited patiently, letting the silence settle before continuing. "Do you know if your daughter-in-law was pregnant before your son's accident?" he asked. I shook my head. She never said a word. If she was, she hid it from everyone. He sighed. "We're reopening the investigation into your son's death. The original report listed it as a brake failure caused by rain and poor road conditions, but the mechanic we spoke to found something unusual. The brake line looked deliberately cut." My heart started pounding. I could barely breathe. "You're saying someone killed him?" The detective didn't answer directly, but his silence said more than words could. "Mrs. Holt, your daughter-in-law collected a $200,000 life insurance payout after your son's death. We need to find out if she had a motive." I felt cold all over. Lydia, the woman I had once called family, the woman my son had loved with all his heart, could she have done this? I wanted to deny it, to believe there was a mistake. But the image of her at the lake kept flashing in my mind, that haunted look on her face as she threw the suitcase into the water. The detective handed me a card. "If she contacts you, do not engage. Call me immediately." I nodded, clutching the card like a lifeline. As he left, I turned toward the nursery window. Through the glass, I saw my grandson, so small, so perfect, his chest rising and falling with fragile breaths. He didn't know the horror that had brought him here, or the darkness that had almost swallowed him. I pressed my hand to the glass and whispered, "You're safe now, Noah. I promise you'll never go through what your father did." But deep down, I knew promises meant nothing without proof. And if Lydia truly was behind all of this, then saving Noah wouldn't be the end of my fight. It would only be the beginning. The next week blurred into a storm of paperwork, interviews, and sleepless nights. I had decided one thing with absolute certainty: I would not let Noah become just another file in the system. He was my grandson, my son's last gift, and I would do whatever it took to protect him. When I went to the Department of Child and Family Services, the woman behind the desk gave me a polite but tired smile. "Mrs. Holt, I understand how much you care for the child," she said, shuffling through a stack of forms. "But at your age, permanent custody is complicated. We have to consider long-term stability." Her words stung. I wasn't fragile. I wasn't done living. I was 61, yes, but I had worked all my life as a teacher, raised my son alone after my husband's passing, and still managed to keep a roof over my head. "I'm not asking for charity," I said softly. "I'm asking for a chance." They agreed to start the evaluation process, but it was endless. Background checks, psychological tests, home inspections. They wanted to know what I ate, how I slept, how many steps it took to reach my mailbox. It felt less like proving love and more like standing trial for it. Every day after the tests, I returned to the hospital. Noah was growing stronger. His cheeks had color again, and his tiny fingers would curl around mine whenever I touched his hand through the crib. The nurses started calling me Grandma Vanessa. I didn't correct them. In my heart, that's who I already was. One evening, as I sat by Noah's bed, an elderly priest stopped beside me. His name was Father Raymond. He'd been visiting patients for decades, his voice gentle but sure. "You have a kind face," he said. "That child must feel it." I smiled faintly. "He's the reason I wake up now." The priest nodded. "You know, sometimes God doesn't choose the strongest soldiers. He chooses the ones who've already been broken because they know how to build others back up." That night, I went home and cleaned every corner of the house. I replaced the curtains, fixed the nursery Michael and Lydia had once planned but never finished. It hurt to touch the old toys, to see Michael's handwriting on the walls, but it also healed me little by little. A week later, the social worker came to visit. She looked around, taking notes. "You've made this place feel alive again," she said. I smiled. "That's because it's waiting for someone small and very loved." As she left, I stood by the window and whispered to the fading light, "Hang on, Noah. Grandma's coming for you. No one will ever hurt you again." It was close to midnight when the call came. I had just finished folding the last of Noah's new blankets, tiny blue ones with clouds printed across them. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the kitchen clock and the wind rustling through the maple trees outside. When the phone rang, I almost didn't answer, but something deep inside told me I should. "Miss Holt." The voice on the other end was cold and deliberate. I knew it instantly. "Lydia." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Where are you?" I asked, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Where I am doesn't matter," she replied. "You have something that belongs to me." I swallowed hard. "You mean Noah?" A low, humorless laugh came through the line. "You think you can keep him. You think you can erase me from the picture. That child is my ticket, Vanessa, to everything Michael owed me and more." I felt my heart pounding in my chest. "You nearly killed him, Lydia. You threw your own child into a lake." She snapped, her voice sharp like broken glass. "You don't know anything. You think I wanted any of this. He was supposed to die with Michael. It was cleaner that way. No questions, no court, no pity." My hand trembled, but I kept my voice steady. "You need help, Lydia. Turn yourself in. It's over." "Over," she hissed. "It's only over when I get what's mine. You have 24 hours to bring him to me. And don't even think about calling the cops. You do, and I'll make sure the truth never comes out." Then she hung up. For a long moment, I stood frozen, listening to the silence on the line. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. Something inside me had shifted. The sadness that had lived in me since Michael's death hardened into resolve. I took a deep breath and dialed Detective Ramirez's number. When he answered, I told him everything, word for word. He didn't sound surprised. "We've been waiting for her to reach out," he said. "We can set up a controlled meet. You'll have officers nearby the entire time." I hesitated, staring at the photo of Michael on the wall. His smile was so alive, so trusting. "If this is the only way to end it," I whispered, "then I'm ready." The detective gave me the location, a warehouse near Clearwater Lake, the same place where it all began. "We'll handle the rest," he said. "Just play your part." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by Noah's crib, watching the soft rise and fall of his tiny chest, and promised him quietly, "Tomorrow it ends. For your father, for you." The next evening, the air felt heavier than usual, thick with the kind of stillness that warns you something is about to break. The police had been preparing for hours. Detective Ramirez fitted a small microphone beneath the collar of my coat, his tone calm but firm. "Keep her talking as long as possible," he said. "We'll be nearby, but we need a clear confession before we move in." I nodded, trying to ignore the shaking in my hands. My shoulders still ached from the cold, but the thought of Noah sleeping safely at the hospital gave me strength. "I can do this," I whispered. When I arrived at the old warehouse by Clearwater Lake, the sun had already dipped below the trees. The building stood half collapsed, windows shattered, its rusted roof groaning against the wind. I parked my car and stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and gasoline. "Lydia?" my voice echoed, thin and uncertain. From the shadows, a figure moved. Lydia stepped forward, her face hidden under a hood, but I recognized her eyes, wild, sleepless, desperate. "You came alone," she said, lowering her hood. "Good. I was worried you might have grown a conscience." "I didn't come for you," I replied softly. I came for Michael and for the truth." Her laugh bounced off the walls, hollow and bitter. "The truth. You wouldn't recognize the truth if it drowned you. You think your son was some saint? He left me with nothing but debt and shame." "That's not true," I said. "He loved you. He worked himself sick to give you everything." "Love doesn't pay bills," she snapped. "You think I didn't see the papers he hid? The insurance policies in his name, the will that gave it all to some unborn child. He was planning to leave me, Vanessa. He wanted to take everything and start over." The pieces clicked together sharper than glass. "So you killed him," I whispered. Her eyes flashed. "I didn't kill him. I made sure fate did its job." She stepped closer, pulling a small gun from her coat pocket. My pulse thudded in my ears, but I stood my ground. "You cut the brakes," I said quietly. "You wanted it to look like an accident." Lydia's lips trembled, half a smirk, half a confession. "And it worked, didn't it? Until you ruined everything." "Ruined?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You threw your own baby into a lake." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't plan that part. I panicked. I couldn't let him live. He was the proof that Michael didn't trust me, that everything he owned would go to that child, to him instead of me." My heart broke for the woman she had become, but I felt no pity. "You don't deserve him," I said. "You don't deserve any of this." Her hand shook as she raised the gun. "You should have stayed out of it, Vanessa." I pressed my palm to the tiny transmitter hidden under my collar. "I guess I'm not very good at staying out of things." Before she could respond, a single shot rang out. Pain tore through my shoulder, knocking me to the ground. The world blurred the sound of shouting, heavy boots pounding the floor, the flash of red and blue lights cutting through the darkness. When I opened my eyes, Detective Ramirez was beside me, pressing a hand to my wound. "You're okay," he said firmly. "It's over. We got her." Lydia was on the ground, handcuffed, screaming as officers dragged her away. Her voice echoed, furious and empty. "You think you've won, old woman? You think this makes you a hero?" I closed my eyes, the pain dulling into exhaustion. "No," I whispered, "it just makes me a grandmother." The hospital ceiling looked softer that morning, maybe because I was alive to see it. The bullet had missed anything vital, pure luck, the doctor said, but the recovery would be slow. My shoulder throbbed every time I moved. Still, when they brought Noah in, all the pain faded. He was wrapped in a light yellow blanket, his small chest rising and falling with steady rhythm. His little hand reached for my finger, and that was enough to make me cry. Detective Ramirez visited the next day. He carried a file and that same tired look all cops get after too many late nights. "It's official," he said. "Lydia will never hurt anyone again. She's been charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. The recording caught everything we needed." I nodded, relief washing through me. "And Noah?" "He's safe. And because you're his only living family, the court's moving fast. Social Services supports your custody claim." That night, I couldn't sleep. I watched Noah through the hospital bassinet. Every tiny breath he took reminded me of how close we came to losing him. I thought about Michael, the way he used to fall asleep on the couch after late shifts, the way he'd light up when talking about becoming a father. I whispered into the dim room, "He's okay, son. You can rest now." A week later, I was released from the hospital. Father Raymond and Nurse Elise helped me settle back home. The walls still bore the faint smell of paint from when I'd redone the nursery, now fully ready for the child it was meant for. 2 weeks later, the courtroom felt cold but bright. The judge, a woman with steel gray hair, reviewed the thick stack of papers before her. "Mrs. Holt," she said, "you have demonstrated remarkable dedication under extraordinary circumstances. It is not often we see such courage or such love." My heart pounded. "Effective immediately, you are granted full and permanent custody of the minor child, Noah Holt." The gavel hit, and just like that, the nightmare ended. I cried loud, unrestrained tears that carried months of fear and grief away. After the hearing, Detective Ramirez shook my hand. "You didn't just save that boy," he said. "You saved his father's memory too." When I carried Noah out of the courthouse, the air smelled like spring for the first time in a long time. Sunlight touched his face and he squinted before giving a tiny yawn. Life was starting again, fragile, pure, but real. That night, as I rocked him to sleep, I whispered, "You're safe now, little one. We both are. And no matter what life throws at us, I'll never let go." The years after the trial unfolded slowly, like the soft turning of pages in a book one never expected to finish. Life became quieter, gentler, full of small miracles that reminded me of everything we'd survived. Noah grew stronger by the day. His hair darkened like Michael's, his laugh filled the house, and his first word wasn't mama or milk, it was gamma. The sound of it melted me every time. At 63, I found myself relearning how to live, not for me but for him. We built a rhythm together, mornings with pancakes shaped like stars, afternoons in the garden, evenings with lullabies that carried both comfort and memory. Sometimes, I'd look at his face while he slept and see traces of Michael, the same gentle jawline, the same way he furrowed his brow in deep dreams. Every milestone felt like a victory. His first steps across the living room, his first day of preschool, his first drawing of us, a crooked stick figure with white hair holding a tiny boy under a big yellow sun. "That's you and me," he said proudly. I kept it pinned to the refrigerator ever since. Detective Ramirez and Father Raymond still visited often. Ramirez became like family, always bringing Noah little toy cars and telling him stories about the bravest grandma in Clearwater. Elise would stop by too, just to check on us, always reminding me to take my vitamins and rest when I could. They were the family I didn't know I still needed. Every year on Michael's birthday, Noah and I drove to the lake. The same lake where everything began, and where everything changed. We brought white lilies and placed them gently on the water. For Daddy, Noah would say, his voice small but certain. I always nodded, too choked up to answer. One year, when he was 5, he asked, "Grandma, why do we come here?" I took his hand. "Because this is where your daddy saved you, in a way. It's where love refused to die." He looked at the water for a long moment, his little face full of wonder. Then he smiled. "Then it's a happy place, right?" I smiled through the tears. "Yes, sweetheart, a very happy place." That night, after he fell asleep, I sat by the window watching the moon's reflection on the lake. The house was peaceful, filled with the soft hum of life, something I once thought I'd lost forever. I opened Michael's old journal, now worn and faded, and ran my hand over the last page. "You did it, my boy," I whispered. "Your son is safe, he's loved, and I've found peace too." I turned off the lamp and looked once more at Noah sleeping in the next room. My heart swelled with something deeper than pride, something like grace. If you've ever lost everything and thought it was too late to start over, I hope you remember this. Sometimes the second chance doesn't come for you, it comes through you. And when it does, you'll find that love, the real kind, doesn't end with tragedy. It begins again with hope. So if this story touched your heart, please share it. Leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from. Because stories like these, stories of survival, love, and faith, deserve to be heard, remembered, and passed on.